Welcome to this edition of Living Well, making the most of your senior years. I'm your host, Terry Crochet. Over the past year plus, during the COVID pandemic, we've had to make lots of changes in our daily lives. Some of those changes are good, like masking and vaccinations that will keep us and those around us safe and healthy. Other changes, like binging on Netflix and raiding the fridge, well, not so good. But for some people, the pandemic has been an opportunity to take a deep dive into some of the activities that we just didn't have time for before. We'll drop in on master woodworker Eric Crum, who will walk us through the steps of fashioning a custom-made pen, the perfect gift any time of year. We'll learn about the joys of crocheting to keep those idle hands busy and productive. And of course, we'll check in with our fitness expert, Val Collins, who will help us ease off the couch and into some healthier activities. But first, basket weaving has been a necessary and utilitarian activity for centuries, helping us carry the necessities of life. And during the past several months, it's an activity that has helped lots of people keep busy during these uncertain times. Let's head over to the Stepping Stone Farm Museum for a master class on basket weaving.
On behalf of the Deer Creek Basketry Guild, I'm happy to welcome you today so that we can tell you a little bit about basket weaving. My name is June Hersey. I've been weaving for more than 22 years, and it's been a very fulfilling hobby. There are a lot of different basket styles that have developed over the years. I'd like to show you a Nantucket lightship basket. These were made in Nantucket Sound, and mostly the lighthouse keepers, to get out of the boredom of watching for ships all day, developed this style of basket. This basket is a rib basket. It actually was designed to hold eggs. It's made from a lot of different ribs and is a very common style that you'll see quite often. I'd also like to show you a Cherokee basket. Cherokee Indians developed Cherokee wheels and Cherokee crosses, and that indicates that that was the type of basket that they developed. We actually have a white oak basket that was made from white oak trees. This goes back for centuries, and it's handed down from one generation to the other. A basket always starts from its base. We brought several different items to show you different bases. This is a twill base. We have a filled base, one with a wooden bottom, and an interesting one is a cat head. Well, we just talked a little bit about basket bases. Now I'm going to show you how we start a napkin base. Our material is rattan, but we wet it first so it's nice and flexible. I've laid out 7 horizontal stakes, evenly spaced, and the centers are aligned. I will start a vertical stake by going over the first stake, under, over, under, over, and under, and over. So I'm going to align the center marks, because when we get to the top, we want to have even amount of stakes available. After we do 1 through the center, we'll add another 3 to the left and 3 to the right. This one will be woven opposite the first vertical stake. That makes our basket base strong and holds together. We'll align the centers to make sure everything comes out the same at the end. So this third stake will be woven opposite the second one. Again, we will center it and evenly space them. So we'll keep building our base to the right of the center and then to the left of the center. After we're done, we'll measure to make sure we're exactly 3.5 inches on each side from the center. So once we finish weaving in all the vertical and horizontal stakes, we'll even them up and space them. We'll measure them, and then we're finished. It will look like this base. And then we're ready to work up the sides. So we bent our stakes so they're standing up. I've already woven in 3 rows, but we're going to add some color to the basket. But first we want to give it a quick squirt, so we're flexible again. So in the water, I've had some 1/4 inch wide reed. This is space dyed, so it adds some color to our basket. So again, we'll be going in front and behind, just like we really started our base. We'll continue around the basket, front, behind, always opposite the row preceding it. And we'll make sure our stakes stay up and straight. We don't want them wimping, we don't want the corners coming in. So we want a nice square basket when we're done with this. So we'll continue around. When we get back to the beginning, we started on the outside. And the reason we start on the outside is because we want to catch that end. We don't want things tearing at our basket. We want to use this basket. So we're back to the beginning. We're going to follow the original path. We're going to do what they call a 4-stake overlap. So I'm going to see where it falls. I'm going to trim it, because when I tuck it behind, I want it locked in and hidden. So we're ready now to start another row. And this reed is space dyed, which means it goes from at least 3 different colors. Again, we're weaving opposite the previous row. So we're just go front and back. We're going to keep the spacing between our stakes so that when we get to the top, it's not falling in or falling out. We want it nice and straight. So at this point, we're ready to do the last step, which is rimming. So I have some rim material here. It's oval on one side, flat on the other. We would wet it, trim it, and actually sew it basically around our basket. And that'll leave a nice finish to the top. In the middle, we will put seagrass, and that'll hide all the cut ends and all the mess that's there. It'll make it look pretty. So we'll add an inside rim, and we'll use some really narrow material to actually lash it on. And then we'll have a nice napkin basket to put in the middle of our dinner table. Well, I hope this has whet your appetite for basket weaving. It's a lot of fun. We do a lot of neat things at the Deer Creek Basketry Guild. We invite you to visit our website, and we'll hope to see you soon. Come weave with us.
We've all heard the saying, idle hands are the devil's workshop. Well, the devil is nowhere to be found among people who crochet. Their hands are busy making afghans, prayer shawls, coasters, and baby blankets. Let's drop in on a couple of lifelong crocheters and discover the joys of crochet.
Hi, I'm Debbie Johansson. This is my friend Linda Askew, and we are crocheting buddies. We've been crocheting for many years. I started crocheting when I was about 9. My grandmother taught me. I think Linda's been crocheting maybe just as long.
Just as long.
We get together once a week, and crocheting is our go-to craft.
Crocheting for both Debbie and I has been such a fun thing to do. It keeps us busy, keeps our hands busy, and like Debbie said, we've both been doing this for a long time. I started when I was around 10 as well, and it has been nonstop ever since.
I found the history of crocheting very interesting because there's really not any recording of exactly when crocheting started. Some of the authors out there who wrote about the history of crocheting started in the 1500s. Some stated that it started in the 1800s, and different parts of the world. A lot of the belief is that it started in China, in the Middle East. There's some notations that it started in South America. A lot of the beginning projects were that of lace and the doilies that many of us collected that our grandmothers, great-grandmothers have made.
To crochet, you need the supplies in order to do so. And very simple. You pick out your yarn. Usually it's based on the color of the yarn, sometimes the texture, sometimes the durability, and it depends on what it is you want to make. But the most important thing for crocheting is the crochet hook. Depending on the size of your hook will depend on the size of your project. Different projects demand different hooks and different sizes.
Is it crocheting or is it knitting? That's the question, as us crocheters get very upset about when you've spent time making a beautiful blanket or another project and somebody says, "Oh, I love it. I've always wanted to learn how to knit." My response is, I do too. I've always wanted to learn how to knit. This is actually crocheting. So knitting is going to have 2 needles. And there's 2 stitches with knitting. Purl and knit are your 2 main stitches. And you're going to do that back and forth. Crocheting is 1 single hook.
Crocheting is something that is very soothing for folks that are avid crocheters. For me personally, I love to crochet. It calms me. Coming after a rough day at work, very stressful day, I like to come home, see this beautiful project sitting there waiting to be finished, and just jump in. It gives me something to focus on, something to think about, with an end goal in mind. And the end goal is that every project that Debbie and I make, or any crocheter makes, I would go out on a limb and say it's typically not for ourselves.
Oh no, we never make things for ourselves. We're always looking at what holidays are coming up, who's having a baby,
Babies.
What events, baby showers, wedding gifts.
Prayer shawls, things of that nature, things that we know that the person on the receiving end is going to be surprised that we would take the time, energy, and love to make them this project. And it's just such an ego thing too, that when you present your project to the recipient, just getting that ooh and ah, and we've seen people cry.
Oh yeah,
and say, "I can't believe you
absolutely.
did this
Right.
for me."
So if you've been entertaining the idea of learning to crochet, my first go-to would be on the computer. A YouTube video, Facebook, there's so many avenues that you can check out. If you're not that computer savvy, I would suggest going to the library. Check with your local craft store, Michael, Joann's. Try to think what else is around there, but any place that sells yarn, they definitely have groups that may get together and crochet together once a week, once a month.
So it's not for everyone, but if you want to do it, there's lots of resources out there.
Well, I disagree with Linda. I think anybody can crochet.
Well, we'll just have to agree to disagree. So, but for now, let's get back to our projects.
Welcome back to Living Well, making the most of your senior years. During the pandemic isolation, lots of people decided to explore some of the hobbies and activities that they simply didn't have time for previously. Wood turning is one of them. It takes some specialized equipment, but can produce some impressive results. We caught up with master woodworker Eric Crum, who will show us how to make a custom pen and impress and delight any recipient.
My name's Eric Crum, and I've been here to talk to you about pen making. Keeping in mind that pen and pencils are really nice. They're a great gift any time of the year. In fact, that's how I got into it. I was making farewell gifts for people leaving the office. It's worth the time and effort. We call it instant gratification because you can actually make one of these in about a half hour. It takes 3 or 4 days overall, but the time to actually working it, about a half hour. And I'll show you how to make this today. So once you've selected your kit and you've cut your wood specifically to the instructions in the kit, you mount it in a chuck. I like using the lathe to turn it instead of a drill press because, one, I don't have to measure the wood and figure out where the center is. I just mount it in the chuck, it's already centered. One thing to keep in mind for safety is you always want to hold on to the chuck while you're drilling. That cuts down on the vibration, and more important, when you're pulling the drill bit out of the wood, it doesn't stay in the wood. Go slow, there's no rush. One thing nice about the drill bit, as I mentioned, is it extracts the wood chips out as it drills. And go slow because you don't want to bust through the end of the wood because it'll cause chips. As you can hear, the tone changes when you drill all the way through. That's the first step. So now that the blank has been drilled out, you need to put the brass tube in it. Before you put the brass tube in it, if it's smooth, you want to rough it up so the glue has something to adhere to. So just take some rough sandpaper, spin the brass tube around, get it nice and scratchy. Then I use 2-part epoxy. Some people use super glue. I find that this is a little more forgiving in case you have a problem because it takes a long time to dry. And that's the other part. People don't like it because it does take time to dry. Slap it on the tube. Make sure you go all the way around. Grab your blank and slowly spin it as you put it in. So it's a 5-minute setting epoxy, but it takes 24 hours to harden. So you take your blank, just set it aside, and come back tomorrow. So the kit, to fit and look good, needs to have smooth ends that are absolutely square. So on the drill press, you just put it in, spin it down, and it'll clean it up. And then it's flush at each end with the brass tube. And then you're ready to turn it. That's the next step. So once you've got the brass tube glued in, and you've let enough time to go by to let it dry and harden, go ahead and mount it on there, mandrel with the bushings. This is a live center. Spins around, but more important, it has a hole in it. It spins, mounts up on here, goes down, and then when you push, it holds the wood in. Most kits, you put the drill bit in here, center bit in here, but if you put too much pressure on it, it can bow the metal. So actually, make sure it's tight, lock it in place. This is called a lathe banjo. Move it in, it holds your tool rest, which is this part right here. And then you want to turn it by hand just to make sure that it's free spinning. It's not going to lock when you turn it on. Turn it on. It's not the speed of your lathe that's the key, it's a sharp tool. So the roughing gouge here is designed specifically to make square wood round. Some people turn the entire piece of wood using this, but I prefer just to get it nice and round, get it smaller. So now I have a finishing tool. It's called a spindle gouge. And you turn the rest of it. This part's a little slower. Some people shape and allow it to be bowed. I prefer just to make it as a straight shot and expose the wood a little more. Now we have to sand it. So it's important to go through the grits as you're sanding. So again, I usually do 220. 300, and then I'll do 400. And there's an important part about the 400. Then once you've got it done, turn the lathe off, and this is important. Then sand with the grain all the way around the blank. Okay, now that you've finished sanding the part, you need to put a coating on it. There are lots of coats on the market. I happen to use a crystal coat because it's easy and it's fast. You want to do this at a low speed, and I usually worry about splattering. I turn it on, shake it up, put it on a piece of paper towel, and then you just apply it. Normally about 3 to 4 coats with this product. This is called a polished finish because, I'll show you, you have to polish it. That means you get 3 to 4 coats. I'll just put 3 on today. Let it spin for a minute. Then you turn the speed all the way up and you polish it. So after you've let the finished product sit overnight and actually let the coating get hard, next thing you want to do is polish it and then buff it. So I'm going to turn it on and put the polishing compound on. This is a rather slow process. Depending upon how many layers you put on the original kit, you just polish it, rotate it, periodically stop and check to see if you're happy with how smooth it has become. Then you go over to the buffing wheel. No compound on this, it's just the fabric that's polishing it. So the last step is obviously taking your turned part and putting it on the kit. Now one thing, it's really important to have the instructions. Last time I looked, there were 645 kits available, and each assembles slightly different. So have the assembly instructions and use them. So once you've got it assembled, the lower part, now you have to put the end piece with the clip, pocket clip, onto the wood. They do special tools that help you compress it in. I just use a clamp. And you insert finished product. This particular one, there's a spin in order to get the ink in and out. That's it. Finished product.
For many of us, the combination of colder weather and a worldwide pandemic has resulted in some serious couch potato habits. Well, our fitness expert Val Collins is here to say, cheer up, not all is lost.
Hi, this is Dr. Val Collins. I'm so glad to see you. It's been a while. We know that through inactivity, through winter, through the COVID, through the last few months that we've had, we've kind of become couch potatoes, maybe, right? Sitting on the couch, no activity in our limbs at all. Well, today we're going to talk about easing back into fitness. There's a lot of things that you can do at home, around the house, outside, on a trail that's nearby. But today we're just going to focus on flexibility and mobility in the joints and in the muscles. So stay tuned and join in if you can. So you may be wondering, what is it that I can do at home? Maybe you have some equipment, maybe you don't. Some of the light equipment that you could use are little dumbbells, maybe you have a band, even a towel you can use for stretching and for doing some moves. But guess what? I'm sitting in a chair and it can come in useful for exercises and for stretches. Maybe you don't have any weights, but you have a couple of cans of vegetables. You can use those as weights, small beginnings. Well, since today we're focusing on flexibility and mobility, the first thing that we want to do is the same thing we do for any type of exercise. Even though it's stretching, we are going to start with warming up. Simple warming up moves, circling through the wrists, circling through the ankles, leaning your head from side to side, Extending the arms in front of you, lengthening through the back muscles, lifting and lengthening through the sides, through the torso, are some simple ones that you can start with. You don't want to bounce through the stretches, but you do want to take your time moving through them. If you want to warm up through the shoulders, just circling them backwards for a few, say 5 to 10, and then circling them back forward. Same thing with the hip. You can rest your hands to the sides, lift your leg, open and close your hip. Just a few times, as I mentioned before, 5 to 10, to kind of get the blood flowing to the extremities. And then we can really get into the stretching. You may be wondering, what are some of the things that I can do outside? Well, do you have stairs? Walking up and down the stairs is good exercise for the leg muscles and for your heart. It will raise your heart rate. What about if you have a grassy area outside? Maybe some trees. You can walk your dog, you can walk by yourself, but strolling is good exercise. You can work with various modes. So you can go fast, you can go slow, you can play with tempos. Good way to get exercise around the house. Did you know that exercise is good for your mental health? There's a lot of releasing in movement. It can also release those happy hormones in your body, just like eating a piece of chocolate. So put the chocolate down and get to moving, whether it's a jog, whether it's a stroll, or maybe some of the warm-up exercises that I showed you earlier. You will find yourself in a different mental space by focusing on the movements and the fact that you're doing something really healthy for your body. Some of us are really concerned about weight, especially the last year during the pandemic, where you kind of sat home and maybe watched TV and maybe ate a little more than you usually eat. Weight loss actually begins in the kitchen. So as you start your regimen again, think about drinking more water. Sometimes we feel like we have little hunger pains, but actually we're dehydrated and our body is asking for more fluid. Start with maybe half to a full glass of water first, and then see if your hunger dissipates. And then get moving, because the sooner you start, the sooner you'll see the weight drop off. Don't worry about how quickly you see changes. A lot of the changes happen inside the body before they're ever evidenced outside. Focus on being able to move. Be happy with that. In time, you will see changes. We didn't get to the point where we are right now in our health and our wellness and our mentality overnight. So give yourself some time, have some patience with yourself, and more importantly, have fun with it. And in time, you will see the changes that you have worked so hard for. It was great spending time with you today. And I know you may still feel like you're in a slump. All you have to do is get up off that couch to start, right? Drink a glass of water. That's another good start. Don't worry so much about how you're going to get to that end goal. Just make a start. And with any program, as we always say, consult with your physician and make sure that it's okay to start. Well, I hope to see you out there. Let's get moving.
Well, that was inspiring. We hope it inspired you to put some happy, healthy habits back into your life. Thanks for joining us on this edition of Living Well. Let us know about some of your favorite activities, passions, and pursuits, and how you're staying safe, happy, and healthy. Until next time, I'm Terry Troyer, reminding you to make the most of your senior years.